Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Today we are here with a video on the new blog post in Old School RuneScape, going through whether or not the new best in slot items are going to absolutely destroy the future of Old School RuneScape, because that's what everyone wants to know. New items, new best in slot things. What does it mean for me? How sad do I have to be? Let's go ahead, dig on into it, and see what we got in store. So they've updated their previous statements after getting back to the community, seeing what everyone else thought. They went ahead and sort of revamped some of the things that they're planning. Also, with the economy the way it is, I think that motivated some of these changes too, which is very interesting. So first off, before we get into any of this, power creep is an essential thing to talk about because everyone's always worried, you know, once you introduce new, better items, of course, you're going to have the subtle power creep that happens over time. However, Jagex says here that honestly, they've been very hesitant to introduce best in slot items, which you can kind of tell because it inevitably creates power creep. This can result in a number of issues, particularly the devaluation of older content. We want to avoid that at all costs because Old School RS thrives on having old content that's actually still relevant. With power creep, it's something that's inevitable. It will happen over time. It's just a matter of delaying it, and Jagex has done a really good job considering Bandos and Armadillo are still best in slot items for their respective categories, and we're 8 years into Old School RuneScape, so I feel like that is a pretty good job, you know, I'll commend them on that. It was pretty shocking to find out that they are going to introduce Torva instead of the Virtus armor. They talk about how it's clear that the Virtus armor didn't excite us as much as Torva, and personally that makes sense considering we don't have any better melee armors in Old School RuneScape than Bandos. While Magic, there have been upgrades. You have Ancestral, which is a nice little addition in Old School RuneScape, so I feel like it makes sense that the melee armor would get people going the most. So they've decided that they will be swapping the Virtus armor set from Nex for the highly requested Torva armor, which personally I understand. They said they do have plans for Virtus going into the future, and they kind of talked about that before, how they still plan to introduce all of the sets from Nex, just not all through Nex, which I feel like is good. That was way too much back in the day where you had 3 different elite armor sets all coming through from the same boss. It's just way too much. As far as the items themselves, the Torva full helm right here, +8 melee strength is the most notable. That's +2 over the current face guard, and the defensive bonuses are about 50% better than the face guard at the moment. The Torva plate body and legs both have +2 over the Bandos counterparts, and their defensive bonuses are about 15 to 20% higher than Bandos. Jagex states that this is a melee armor set consisting of a full helm, a plate body, and legs. It's better offensively and defensively than Bandos, with slightly worse defensive capabilities and prayer bonus than Justiciar. Therefore, they believe that Torva has a very appealing offensive skill set that will sort of replace Bandos for the highest tier, and Justiciar will still hold a solid place for its purpose. Personally, that's one that I question a little bit. I didn't really think Justiciar had too much of a purpose as is at the moment. I mean, it's very niche, and it still will be, I mean, even more so very niche. However, I just wish it was a bit better. I always hoped that the defensive items in-game would be very good. The Din's Bulwark was something that for a long time was sitting at 3 mil because it had basically no use. So items like that I always want to be better, and I just don't see that happening. So I'm a little sad. To allow the economy in the game to still be somewhat fluid, though, they state that pieces of the Torva set are going to drop as broken and unequipable and must be revitalized using components salvaged from the Bandos set. You'll be able to break down your Bandos pieces in a furnace found within the ancient prison and receive tradable Bandosian components in return. Combine these with the broken Torva pieces and you'll assemble the set. So essentially still giving some good use to the Bandos items in-game, which is beautiful. When you break down Bandos pieces, you'll get 3 components per chest plate and 2 per tacet, which I found to be very interesting considering the tacets have always been a more expensive piece. So to make a chest plate give you 3 components is very strange to me. I understand it in the sense that the chest plate's typically the better piece. Like if you were to only be able to choose one and the other slot you had to have nothing on, it would be much better to have the chest plate. So it is a better item in that sense. However, given the prices, I felt like it was a little strange, but that's just a hard conundrum to sort of deal with, I guess. So you get 5 total pieces for breaking it down, and to charge the Torva items, you'll need 5 total pieces as well. 1 for the helmet and 2 for both the chest and legs. They also mentioned that everything here is tradable in all of its different states, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And also that the Virtus armor got generally good feedback, so they aren't going to scrap it completely. We'd still like to introduce it as a reward later down the line, and with a few tweaks based on your feedback. You might remember that our original plans were to release Torva later down the line alongside a different update themed around a certain ancient god. With the changes in the blog, though, we now think that Virtus would be a suitable reward for that update instead, so basically just swapping out Torva for Virtus and kind of the timeline of the game, so I don't mind that. They say the inevitable question is why not both sets right now, and personally, before I even read the answer, I think it just makes sense to only have one set per, you know, god. I mean, that's kind of how most of the other gods work, so I wouldn't want them to do any more than that. They say, well, other content of the same difficulty has the same number of rewards, and we don't feel like she needs any more right now. What you get is pretty awesome, and I would agree with that. I think it's more than enough. Personally, I'm a fan of Torva. I think that this makes a lot of sense too, the way they went about it with Bandos, so I'm very happy for that. Obviously, the game is changing in the sense that it's evolving and moving on. But that's going to happen over time. There's been tons of changes, and people have been, you know, yelling and reeing about how old school RuneScape isn't really old school as long as it's been out. So it's not really anything new to me. There are some other notable items. To start, we have the Zerite Vambraces. Here you can see a nice glove slot item for range that will be best in slot and will replace Barrow's gloves for most people. Initially, this was going to be a 50 defense item. However, after probably hearing from Zerkers in the PKing community, they were like, please, you know, don't keep us out of this. I don't really like the idea of making content fit certain account builds, but you know, I'm not gonna be a hater and complain about it, so it's okay. They've lowered the defense down to 45 as the requirement, so I'm fine with that personally. They did, however, change the Zarite bow to Zarite crossbow, which I am very intrigued by. They say that the Zarite bow got a lot of great feedback, but we noticed that many of you were hoping for a new crossbow instead, especially following the introduction of the Bofa. So we'd like to introduce the Zarite crossbow. In addition to that, you have the T-bow. So with the Bofa and the T-bow and then a Zarite bow, that's just a lot of bows, especially when you don't have a good high tier crossbow. So I'm a big fan of this. Looking at its stats, essentially it has a good bit higher range bonus than an Armadillo crossbow. Also has some defensive bonuses as well and a +1 to prayer. On top of that, the Zarite crossbow special attack will trigger a guaranteed bolt effect if you succeed at hitting the target / passing accuracy. This costs 75% of energy, so a pretty hefty special attack at that, and the Zarite crossbow passively enhances all bolt effects by 10%. So, for example, you might be able to use Ruby Bolt's E and a special attack, and with that you can get 110 damage hit on a monster with relatively good confidence that it's going to happen. Of course, you need to pass the defense first, but assuming you do hit, that is quite the hit at that. Jagex says, if there's a new crossbow in town, what happens to everyone's favorite noisemaker, the Armadillo crossbow? Gotta love it. They say they decided to take a similar approach to the Torva armor. The Zarite crossbow will be dropped as a broken item that comes from Nex and must be combined with an Armadillo crossbow and 250 Nile shards to make it usable. Then as the final main item from Nex, we do have the Ancient God Sword. This item is essentially the same as other God Swords, however here you do have a fun little special attack that essentially hits like a normal hit, however also adds 10% damage to that hit, and there's an 8-cycle timer that starts that if the target does not move more than 5 tiles away before the timer ends, they'll be hit for 25 damage, and the attacker will be healed for 25 damage. So a weird, fun little special attack there that's probably niche for PvP uses, which I think most God Swords should. I think that the Armadillo God Sword was one of everyone's favorites for its fun PvP uses, so I could see that happening here. It's a bit strange, but overall with the blog post, really enjoyed it. I thought that they did a good job supplementing Torva for Virtus, because Virtus just isn't something that's going to get the people going as much. There's not as many mage-based bosses or monsters that you go out to in-game to really have a good bit of fun with that armor, so I think that that's a good switch. Honestly, going forward, I'd be more interested in some mage-based bosses. I think that would help out a lot, but beyond that, I thought that they listened to us very well, got some good changes in there where needed, and overall, very excited to see what Nex will look like going forward, along with all of the additions to come with it. So yeah, that is going to be it for this update video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Would love to hear your thoughts on the updates down below in a comment, and if you want to see more videos like this as soon as they go live, make sure to subscribe. Also got a beautiful community and a ton of different links you can check out down below. But with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.